And this was a big one that I've been learning a lot about it and kind of studying it a lot, but is the concept of frequency masking. And this to me is why anytime there's issues with sound design, whether it's something being too loud or something being too soft, to me is not, my first approach isn't necessarily to just turn volumes down or turn volumes up. That's not gonna be the first thing that I do is go up or down. The first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna think about frequencies. And so what I'll go to a lot is a chart like this. This is just one of them, there's many of them, but this helps lay out visually. Left to right is the full frequency spectrum of human hearing. It starts down at like 20 hertz at the far left side, and then the far right side is a little bit over 20K, which is the full spectrum of human hearing. And this helps lay out some of the instruments and where they land on that frequency spectrum. And what's going to happen is if I stack a lot of things in the same frequency, they're going to start to fight each other, because us, for human hearing, is they all just blend into one. So if I have a bunch of different sounds that may be on the low end, if I have a bunch of like tubas, and I have a bunch of like concert bass drums and a bunch of big giant toms hitting stuff at the same time, and we go, I can't hear what's going on. And then maybe now we also have a bass drum solo happening on top of that on the field, is like all of that stuff is fighting each other. They're all living in similar frequencies, all of those things are going on at the same time. So now it's like, hey, bass drums, you need to be louder, I can't hear you. And it's like, well, they're like, maybe that's not the right answer, is just tell bass drums to play louder. Like maybe let's address that. So that would be like on the acoustic side, but then the same thing is gonna happen on the electronic side, is if I'm adding a bunch of sounds that are battling what's going on acoustically, then it's just gonna make everything come across as muddy, and as an audience member, it's gonna make it really unclear what we're trying to go for. So what I'll do a lot is EQing, which is basically taking, it's basically like volumes, but for very specific frequencies. Is I can take a specific frequency and I can make it louder or I can make it softer. So then I might go somewhere in that range if I know, okay, these instruments are playing in that moment, I'll go on the EQ and I'll take that out. So now those instruments can be heard clearly, because that's the only thing happening in that frequency spectrum, and then the sounds will be happening on either side of it. So that way neither thing is fighting each other, they can both live in that same space and they can both complement each other. So that's a big one to me. And also just to like paint another picture would be similar to like the visual side. If we had a bunch of things all on top of each other trying to happen at the same time in one visual space, it just ends up being crowded. And so we want to help spread some of those things out so that everything can have their own space to occupy and their own space to live in. So I would say that was a big one. That was, as soon as I like learned about this stuff and started using it, was a very big light bulb moment for me as far as sound design and making everything come across clearly. As soon as I started doing that stuff, like everything was able to live in a much better space.